It was established in 2016. It used to be the rescue center for the Milu deer and birds in Dongting Lake, and up until now, 69 Milu deer has been saved. And under the leadership of Hunan Provincial Forestry Administration, Yueyang Municipality has worked on the rescue, mating, and returning work of Milu deer. Nature is the best home for wildlife. So you could see that in the Milu Deer Park, we have some wetlands design. For example, the grassland. And you could see some Milu deer looking for food and taking a walk. They seem to be at leisure. Now, there are 32 Milu deer in total in the park, all of whom have been saved. And we have prepared some professional rescue facilities and staff. Once they spot any Milu deer in danger, they would take Milu deer to the park for rescue. And once they recover, the Milu deer would be returned to the wetlands in Dongting Lake. This is Chairman Li Zheng of the Milu Deer Preservation Association. He has about 11 years of experience in saving and rescuing Milu deer. And this deer is a celebrity in this park. His name is Dian Dian. So we would love to invite our staff to introduce to us about some stories of saving and protecting the Milu deer. So what is this meal for Dian Dian? This is the third meal for her. She had the first breakfast in the morning, and she would also keep searching for some grasses by herself, and in the afternoon there would be some food. So usually 3 meals a day. Yes, 3 meals for the grown-ups. There would be some feed stock in the morning, and then they would search for some grasses by themselves, and in the afternoon there would be the third meal, also the grasses. I heard that this park has a lot of water plants. Could you introduce to us? We have different water grasses and rye grasses. Those grasses are usually suitable food for the Milu deer. What about this grass that she's taking now? This is actually the reed. Could I try to feed her? I don't think so. She has been feeding herself for quite long, so possibly she's already full. You can have a try. Which part does she prefer, the leaves or the sticks? No, she's already full. 3 meals already for today. Not interested in it anymore. I saw many kids paying visit here yesterday. The park has invited plenty of visitors to experience the park, and I saw many children calling her name, Dian Dian. Dian Dian is the celebrity here. Yes. She's a girl. She has no horns. She is also a hero mom. She has given birth to 8 children here in the park. Mr. Li, do you still remember your first time seeing Dian Dian, what it's like? In 2006, she was transferred to this place from the rescue station. She was very thin because the rescue station has limited conditions. Once she was transferred here with better conditions, she grew much better. And this year she has given birth to the 8th child. The first 5 children have been returned to nature. For the other 3, including the 2 born in the previous 2 years, we are training them, and we plan to return them to the wild next year. How old was she when you first spotted her? That was in 2012. Our volunteers just saved her. She was just born with dots covering her body. She was just several days old after birth. So people call her Dian Dian because of the spots on her. She was abandoned by her mother. Why was she abandoned? because when she was born, that was the season of flood. Once the flood arrives, the animals might be chased away. So she got lost from her mom, and we took her to our rescue station. She was fed by the cows in our station, so she feels very intimate to others. How old is she right now? 13 years old by now. So what is that like for a deer compared to man? If she is a man, she is like in her 50s or 60s. What is her condition now? In pretty good shape. Do you have any examinations to her? We have some site checks, and we also do some measurements like a weight measurement, some physical exercises would be done. Also in the wetland, there have been some gutterways, and the Milu deer prefer to stay in the water, burying themselves in the water, with only the horns sticking out from the surface of the water. Some others enjoy the cool breeze along the water. So could you please introduce about the relationship of water and the Milu deer? Why do the Milu deer prefer to live with water? You make the point. Milu deer depends on water. There are several reasons. The first one is they have very thick fur, and their perspiration gland is not that developed. They have to use water to dissipate the heat. And also there might be some parasites growing on them. So once they immerse themselves in the water, the parasites would be taken away. And also, when they stay in water, there would be no enemies coming close to them. That's why they really prefer to take a bath, especially in the hot season with the thick fur. They prefer to stay in water. And the Milu deer might be swinging their tails. They must be chasing away the bugs and flies, yes. Sometimes if there are some bugs or fleas on their body, they would try to rub their skin against the tree trunk or stay in water. And now you can see some baby Milu deer feeding themselves with their mother's milk. And I heard that there have been several babies born this year, including Dian Dian's baby. How do you take care of those newborns? For the newborns, we have no interference. We just observe from a distance. The Milu deer will voluntarily gather the newborns together, just like in the kindergarten. Once they need milk, for 2 to 3 hours, their mothers would try to spot their babies based on their smell, and vice versa. The babies could also look at their mothers with their smell. And within the first months since they were born, the babies were very spotty and very thin. So why would the spots disappear from their skin? And when could we judge that the babies are good enough to leave their mothers and be more independent? Usually it's 3 months' time. After 3 months, they could eat grasses by themselves, so they would live in a herd instead of just depending on their mom. But sometimes it took them 3 months' time. And also there would be some training for going to the wild. You mentioned about the training. I know the training is a very important function of this park. Once they recover, you would start the training. What is the procedure of the training like? And usually in our station, the first step is to spot the injured Milu deer. After treatment, we would put them in the rehabilitation center. And for those Milu deer ready to go to the wild, we will try to stop feeding them some very fine food. Instead, we replace them with the grasses from the wild so that they could be adaptive to the wild nature. And we would also conduct some training for them, like running or going through the water. So through about half a year to 1 year's time, we would return them to the nature without any anesthesia. What do you mean by no anesthesia? That means we just return them to nature directly with no anesthesia. And after returning to the wetland in the Dongting Lake, could they adapt? It usually takes them 2 to 3 days in order to get along with the others. Last year, it was about 2 to 3 days before we observed that they got along with the herd. We know that the Milu deer live in a crowd. And do you return them to the nature as a group or one by one individually? Relatively, they were returned in pairs. For example, 2, 4, 8, or even more together. So they could have company, yes. That would be easier for them to find their group and will not be alone. Thank you, Mr. Li, for that introduction. Just now, Mr. Li introduced to us about the habits of Milu deer, especially the stories about Dian Dian, the celebrity deer here in the park. The visitors could take the touring bus to have some close contact with the deer. The deer looks big in size, but they are pretty mild in personality. Our visitors could try to feed them, but it might occur that the deer has already been fed, so they're not interested in the food. So don't be disappointed if that is the case. And also we have another exhibition hall. You could have a real-time monitoring of the living habits of the deer. And here, let's move inside. Some kids are having some lessons now. We have invited manager Li Xiang to take us around this digital exhibition hall. Good afternoon, everyone. We are from the Dongting Lake Milu Deer Park. Our projects are empowered by technologies and culture. In addition to daily rescue and preservation, we have introduced a lot of scientific lessons every day. There would be 12 courses delivered every day. For example, to observe the wetland environment, our relationship with the Milu deer. We are not taking the children to just have a look at the deer. Instead, we hope they could see the harmonious existence of man and nature. What are the courses for the children? We have 2 themes. The first one is have a nighttime observation of the deer. That is to say, they could observe the deer at nighttime. The second one is about some handwork. We have made some horn-based chairs or the wood utilities, and recently we are experimenting those courses. The children spoke highly of those courses, and that's why our courses are very popular among the parents. There is a big screen, and there is another one on the opposite side of this hall. We could control the 2 displays, but they have different functions. Mr. Li, could you please introduce to us about the digital twin screens? I said about the culture and technology contents in the park. For example, our curriculum design. In our design, we take them for some handworks. For example, they could wear some waistbands on their arms, and then they could accumulate their scores and exchange gifts. That's more interesting. And let's take a look at the big screen. That's a digital screen. In the park, there are 190 cameras and infrared monitors to monitor the daily habits and the physical changes of the deer. Mr. Lee is taking a pad. It's connected with the 2 displays and over 20 cameras. By controlling through the pads, we can switch the different cameras to observe real time. Also, there is a control station over there. The visitors could voluntarily click on that control board in order to see which deer they prefer. And also, I mentioned there are 6 newborns this year. Usually, the newborns are very small, covered in white spots. The visitors can also use those equipment to try to find those newborn deers. Since we are a rescue center, our size is relatively smaller compared to the traditional preservation stations. We hope that every visitor could have some idea about every deer because we have all the cameras covering all of the deer, and also we can use AI technologies to record how much food they take, how much distance they walk per day, so that we could be ready for returning them to the wild. And most importantly, through the daytime and the nighttime observation of the deer from a close distance, or through the cloud feeding programs or some interactions with those deers. Those are about the charm of technological innovation. Mr. Lee mentioned about the archives, the records of the deer. For example, I like Dian a lot. I could control the pads to have some idea about what Dian was doing last night. I could replay. And with the cameras, for monitoring purposes, visitors could have better understanding about the habits of the deer. It's the same thing for AI system. AI is recording and then telling stories about the deer with the human language. And also we have live show at night. It can tell us what is Dian doing today, and we have AI voice to mimic Dian's voice. So it's like Dian is telling us directly how much grass did I take this morning, when did I go to sleep last night, I am fed up with the food by the keepers and I ask for a change for my meals. So it's 24/7 monitor. You could see with your naked eyes, but not just that. Our technology could do more. We invite you closer to the world of the deer. You feel like you're one of the deer, and you just live in the preserve. With the virtual reality technologies, by wearing the goggles, you go into the world of deer. Maybe you can have a try. I see one of your staff is experiencing. It's an experience cabin for the visitors who can put on the VR goggles. Then they can experience how to find the injured deer, how to save them and return them to the nature. And you can hear the vibration sounds during this experience. That's like you are echoing what has been felt by the deer. And our AI system has been updated all along. This content that you see is about how our staff spot the deer in the wild, how they rescue the deer. And the visitors can directly feel like they are on the side of the wild. And in the next season, during the stag battles, our visitors could experience how the battles are unwrapped. So once they put on the goggles, they become the deer in the battle. And if they are the king of the stags, they can fight the other kings. Yes, and you could have a lot of girlfriends. But if you lose, they just run away and wait for another opportunity. We're also testing some contents about those kings that fail in a new battle, and we would try to find out what they would do. We know that those who fail could live together with the herd, with the group together, but what do they feel? We are trying to record their feelings. This is the AI agent. It's our interpreter. We have a big size. Our staff cannot answer all of the questions to the visitors, so we harness the power of technologies. The agents could tell us more knowledge about the Milu deer. For example, there might be some strange questions. Could you try to challenge her? Hello there. You can ask me any questions about Dongting Lake. I would love to know that in the stag battles, how can the king ensures his success? In some specific games, the stags compete. And could you please detailize your questions? Maybe you have to tell more details. I would love to know that when the stags compete, what is the situation like? You must be asking about the battles between the Milu deer. They compete for their mating and their land. Usually the kings would have more edge. Next month, in June, our visitors could come here to experience the stag battles. Maybe in June next month, our visitors could pay visit to this VR cabin to have first-hand experience about the stag battles. More technology programs are under development. For example, Milu deer theaters or some special programs at night with technological power. We can restore more scenarios. They can see with their eyes and also they can play games. For the visitors, they could not only visit and tour around, they can also shop. Those are all the creative products relevant to deer. They can touch and take away. For example, those are some examples. Those are the Milu deer dolls. And the fourth Hunan Tourism Development Conference was held in Hunan, Yueyang. Yueyang has elevated Jiangtun One Golf, and the birds forest were also newly established. We invite our visitors to visit Hunan for touring. So we are now in Yueyang of Hunan province. Thank you for watching. Just now, my colleague has shown you the Milu deer. And now I am standing next to the wetland. This is the core area of Dongting Lake. This is also the residence for the Dongting Lake's deer. We have invited Professor Song Yucheng, an expert in the Milu deer preservation. Hello, everyone. I come from the East Dongting Lake Preserve. My name is Song Yucheng. Professor Song, we have water grasses all around us, and in the distance, we can see that floating on the surface of the water, there are some reeds and the water chestnuts. Those must be the favorite places for the Milu deer, right? Yes. This is the one area that the Milu deer might be concentrated. With the water grasses, the reeds, and water chestnuts, there must be some special features that the Milu deer prefer about this place. First of all, this is the central area of the preserve. It's in the center geographically, and we can see the high rising reeds. This place is serene and safe. So those are favorable conditions for the deer. Especially in the hot season, they depend upon the water. They could cool themselves down and they could feed themselves with the water grasses. And in the summertime, they could take mud baths in the mud flat. and also they enjoy themselves in the grassland. The grasses are their food, and the high-rising reed is good places for their hiding. That's why this is their habitat. This is one of their favorite habitats, actually. And we have a poster here. The map shows us the location of Dongting Lake. Professor Song, could you show us where are we standing now? Precisely in the map. We are here in the spot. Dongting Lake is in the shape of a butterfly. We are now in basically the center. We know that there are floody seasons and the dry seasons in Dongting Lake. And this place is almost flooded. In the summertime, this place would be all water from the lake. And we can find some water chestnuts scattered all around. The water chestnuts are also born in water. Exactly. Because of that favorable conditions, the deers could find some place to hide and sufficient food. With our naked eyes, and that is the telescope. Is it used for observation? Yes, it's for observation of the deers. And it's very portable. Could you use the telescope to find several deer in the distance? Of course. We have recorded some memorable moments during the days of scientific investigation. For example, some snapshots about the stag battles between the kings. So, two male kings of the deer have to compete for their mating opportunity. And when does it happen usually? In the rutting season, it occurs between May and August. So now, this is the rutting season. It's quite common. In our camera, we can see a male deer and several female deers. They have some difference in terms of sizes and horns. Yes, mainly horns. Only the male deer has horns. And in our camera, there is only one male and 7 to 8 female. So that's about the mating group in this season. So we have recorded two male deer competing for their mating rights now. This is a so-called stag battle. They are poking their horns. That is quite commonplace for the adults. They have bigger horns. Once they have bigger horns, the male deer would appear more magnificent, and all the others might choose to battle him in that way. And the dark-colored one is competing against the others. The dark-colored deer must be the king, right? Yes. Yes, she's like the boss of that herd. It's a fierce competition, and I can even see some fish leaping out from the water. And that king of the deer slips. The contestant seems to be very strong, and once the contestant takes a step back, our king of Milu deer trip over. And also the contestant has blood covering his face all over. Does that mean that it's the end of the game? Yes. We are clear about the result. The contestant has to leave. So clear result. Although the young male deer contestant is slowly moving away from this area, and our old king sets his eyes sternly on this contestant, making sure that he leaves. Is it possible that when the two stags compete, they are a tie? Actually, only one. The two deer are almost the same level. Could we find the stag battles taking place just like the one we just saw? Otherwise, there would just be some ceremonial chasing between two deers. It's easier to tell the result. Only when the two deer are parallel in strength can they really battle. And now that deer is trying to withdraw. Blood is on his face. Usually, if the two male deer have a huge difference of strength, there would be no battle. They just have a fight orally, and you can know the result. Yes, in most cases, there will be no direct physical contact for the two deer with stark difference of strength. And not far from here, we can see in our camera that the young contestant is slowly moving away, sometimes turning back, looking at this old king, and the old king of the deer is staring at that young contestant, giving no other opportunity to him. And I wonder that for such stag battles, what is that king fighting for? Those deer, the female deer, so his family members. And Milu deer is one animal species that adheres to the principle of polygamy. Is the king the only one to have that opportunity? Yes. Only the king has the mating power. He is the guardian of this land. That is to say, the other male stags could only have the mating rights once the king gets loose on them. Especially in the mating season, it occurs frequently. In our camera, we can find that in the distance there are a group of deer enjoying their time. Some are lying on the ground, some are feeding themselves on the grasses, some are taking a walk with their tails swinging. Could you tell that they are all females from the camera? Yes. In addition to just one male king, all the others are the females and the newborns. So it's just like a family with one male, several female deer, and several newborns. I can also see two water birds. They must occur a lot in this place. Yes, this habitat is visited not just by the deer, but also different types of birds because it's very safe and serene. In our camera, we can find the lake, the flat mud, and high-rising reeds. And once the flood comes, the deer might have to migrate to higher places. Yes, this place would be flooded. On our side, we are standing very close to the water. This is the water, and then we can see the water chestnuts and the reeds in the distance. The reeds might grow to 3 to 4 meters high. Our scientists discovered that the reeds have high density and a large area for the living of the deer. What is the function of the reeds? Reeds are very important for deer, especially in the springtime when the reeds just sprout. They are the food source, the major food source for the deer. But then the water content of reeds go down. It's not that delicious. And this place is surrounded all by reeds. So the reeds could play another function about less interference from man. That's why this wetland is very quiet. The deer prefer to stay here. And we find something about the deer. They may appear on the flat mud because there is no visual obstacle. We can directly spot the deer, but if they hide themselves in the reeds, we can never find them unless they give out some sounds. Because this place is very broad-spaced, the sound could be spread to about hundreds of meters, so we can still hear them very clearly and loudly from a distance. You can hear them from 2 kilometers away. That means the deer is not only big in size, they are very powerful. For example, we mentioned about the stag battles between the two males. It would be a very fierce battle. And the battle was undertaken because of earning the mating power. And it's just like men. There must be parents and children in a family, and the parents would certainly do whatever they can to protect the family. Speaking of protection, the deer would not only protect their family. And on the part of the scientists here, what has been done to preserve the living conditions of deer? For deer to reside in Dongting Lake, it's been 26 to 27 years. Now we have 300 deer. Once they came, we took Milu deer as a very precious species for our preservation. We have daily monitoring of them. Secondly, for the deer or migrating birds protection, the most important thing is we must come to the social consensus. That means the public must be invited to be part of the preservation. So we need to do a lot of education and publicity work. And we also have to consider the specialties of Dongting Lake, for example, the flooding season. Through a long time of monitoring, we came to understand that what is the pathway for the Milu deer to come to the land, and we could establish a safe platform for deer to safely spend their time on the platform during the flood season. Additionally, for the trapped deer, we would have some artificial feeding. For those drowning deer, we would save them. Since they are wildlife, in order to keep their wildness, we only appear once we are needed. The most important thing is that they could help themselves. we can find the deer running freely. They can go through the water, but as you mentioned, during the flood season, there is a risk of drowning, so we have to save them in order to take them back to their normal life. We can see the deer really prefer the water environment. In Dongting Lake, with a combination of the lake, the water grasses, and the flat mud, it's really the most suitable place for the Milu deer. This big deer must be the old king that we saw in the battle. Yes, that's him. And right next to him, those are all the female deer and the young babies. We can find a huge difference between those deer. And this family is pretty big. How many are there in such a family? 5 to 6 dozens. There are also some young male deer. They are actually outsiders. The family is too big, so the king might not be able to spot those outsiders. That's why they are mixed with the family. Speaking of that, it's really like the society. This group has strong sense of organization and management. Some of the deer have horns. Are they male? They're the babies. They're not mature yet, so they cannot challenge the king. They have no power at all. That's why they could stay in the family right now. I can see some male deer with short horns. They're like teenagers. They're not very mature yet. They're not a threat to the king, so the king doesn't usually chase them away. Deer must be very sensitive, because when our drones fly above them, they're very vigilant. That's why we couldn't stay very close to them. When the scientists meet them, what is their response usually? If we are 500 to 600 meters away from them, they just stare at us. When we come even closer, like 200 to 300 meters away from them, they might run away. I can see some rings worn by the deer. What's it about? If the deer is wearing a necklace, that means the deer must have experienced something special to improve the diversity of Milu deer in Dongting Lake. Beijing Milu Deer Park has sent some deer to Dongting Lake, and those deer would wear the necklace. That necklace is actually about satellite navigation device. We could locate them geographically. In the Stag battle, the old king was wearing a necklace. Does it mean that this king must be very strong to become the leader of the family? In terms of adaptability into the Dongting Lake environment, it must be easier for the king. Yes, the reason that it can win the battle and become the king is a testament that even though he has come to Dongting Lake for not long, he can really stand in this environment. From Nanhaizi Milu Deer Park in Beijing, a dozen of deer has been introduced to Dongting Lake. That's why they are wearing necklaces right now. But we cannot tell exactly where they came from. They seem very natural living in this environment, which means they really get along with the family, yes. According to our knowledge, in Dongting Lake, the deer may come from Beijing, Jiangsu, Hubei provinces. So Dongting Lake is the only one place in China to have a concentration of deer from different places. I can see the mothers and the babies, and right next to them there are some ducks floating. That's the ducks. and the newborns. It's a very beautiful view, a very beautiful ecological view. In our picture, we could see them swimming from the left to the right. So they're crossing the river. And in this process, we realize that Milu deer prefer to move a lot. From a distance, we can see with our naked eyes that those deer are crossing the water. From the opposite bank, they slowly get down into the water and moves slowly to the mud. Why is that? Is it because they just like to move, or are they searching for some plants? We can only tell that the deer has been moving through the water because it's cooler in the water in the hot season. It can lower down the temperature, body temperature. Another point is they can eat some water grasses. So crossing the water is also for searching the water plants, yes. And also it's not very hot right now. It's a good environment to exercise a little. During our live show, those deer has been very restless. They move a lot. Slowly, they move from the left to the right in our camera. By wading the water, they are coming close to the center of the lake. Within 20 minutes' time, they keep moving themselves. So they are truly very active. And during your preservation work, does it happen that you couldn't spot even one deer? Or they might be hiding from you? Of course. Dongting Lake is pretty big. Even though it's a wetland environment, there are many reeds and ditches. There are so many places for the deer to stay. And it happens that we may not be able to find them. So artificial interference is minimum. The wild deer is unlike those kept deer by man. It's much harder to find them. But today in our show, we successfully spot a group of deer. You are very experienced in finding this spot based on your years of scientific investigation. How did you find this place? We came to know that in this season, what kind of environments do the deer prefer to reside? Since it's the end of May, it's pretty hot, and deer relies heavily on the water. So we came to conclude that the deer must be around the water. Besides, it's a mating season. Since they have a mating field, usually it's in the grassland. And also, more importantly, they need a safe environment. We have to find a water pond with food, with mud flat. If all of the factors are combined, the success ratio of finding them is very high. So this is a place with a lot of favorable factors. That's why we can succeed finding them. And just now, the deer has changed places. Just then, several deer has been on the bank, but now they are all moving towards the center of the lake. Like you said, at 2 p.m., it's pretty hot. The deer would like to dispel the heat in the water. And also, you mentioned about water grasses. What kind of food do they like the most? In general, they prefer food with higher water contents, for example, the waterborne food, or those green grasses below our feet. They just grew and very fresh. For the old and the dry grasses, they don't taste very delicious to the deer. In the full seasons in Dongting Lake, the deer do not lack food because in Dongting Lake, there are seasonal changes. In the floods, once the flood season ends, the grasses in the Dongting Lake would grow again. Then there would be plenty of food. And in springtime, they grow for another time. That's why the deer doesn't lack any food if they live in Dongting Lake. Since 1998, Dongting Lake was flooded, and the deer then came to the lake and make it their home. Now there are in total 300 deer. In our live show today, we could find the family of deer very active and very protective of their family members. So this is what I see in Dongting Lake wetland.